So we are going to talk, so it's going to be Dan Hyde, who is CEO and founder of IgniteData, and it's what we are going to present is the collaboration AstraZeneca is doing in the pursuit of building up EHR to EDC capability. I was smiling when I saw Charles' slides because it's also represent the potential here to really addressing a very important aspect or an important pain that we have in clinical trials. So next slide, please. Or, sorry, I do it myself. So the agenda for today is going to be sort of why are we pursuing this capability? A little bit about the AstraZeneca mission here, which I most likely think we are sharing with the rest of the industry. All right. And then I will hand over to Dan to show you the Archer system that we have been honored to co-develop with IgniteData, and which we think in the AstraZeneca world that this is really a very promising approach towards EHR to EDC capability. EHR to EDC, the first principle may sound very easy, but it is data should be entered once. That is not the case. So that's simple, but it's darn hard. And it's complicated. And the kind of things that we could achieve here is that we could do a number of value generations here. Reduce site burden. And currently, there is a large amount of data. Astoundingly, it is digitized, but we are still transfer it, double entry. I don't know which is worse, the time or the error that is invoking and causing cost time and longer time to getting medicines to patients. We could increase the site's efficiency. We are by no means taking away the remuneration, but we do think that those sites could actually spend their time of recruiting more patients to the trial, and therefore being able to do trials that they would never ever been able to do. So this is a quite important value statement. Source data verification is of course a holy grail here. If we can reach a tipping point where we can reduce that, which in some cases is actually taking 20% of the cost of our trials. Improves data quality. This is very important, I think, and we will come a little bit to that. And also we would like to be, AstraZeneca would like to be in the forefront of this evolution, and we also would like to be sponsors of choice for sites, right? Just give you an example of what is at stake. I'm not going to go in detail. This is a courtesy of Sanofi, and this is also some of the work that we did collaboratively with European hospitals, Janssen and Sanofi. Just giving you an imagination of the time of the cost savings we could do here if we just sort of took 50% of the data and being able to do EHR to EDC capability on those. We believe as well that, of course, it's depending on the trials, that this is a conservative estimation. So AstraZeneca's mission in this one is that we should be in the driving seat on this and actually being able to take a stepwise approach of doing the last and important things where being able to induce real-world evidence into our trials by a very difficult approach of really taking data directly from source. And before I let Dan in here, I think it's important also to say that we are humble This is a stepwise approach. And you also heard Shah saying this is a hybrid approach. Yes, it is. It is a hybrid approach where we could see in the next coming years that we're doing perhaps 5-10 sites in oncology trial or CV trial where we have this capability, where those sites is able to perhaps capturing EHR to EDC, transferring just as very important data domains that is causing pain. And those domains is, especially when it comes to oncology, local lab, concomitant medication, vital signs. And if we can do that, we will build evidence, and we also saving resources and cost and money. So with that, I think Dan will talk a little bit about this, but this is how ARCH is positioned here. And one thing that I would like to say, and then I'm trespassing on Dan's, is that EHR to EDC is not about sort of mining, as we as sponsor, mining data. Absolutely not. It's only directed to those data domains that is relevant for the protocol. I think it's important to make that crystal clear. And as such, the ARCH tool here and the EHR to EDC capability is what I really like. IgniteData and Dan has coined the phrase, this is a virtual research assistant. It is. And this is a busy slide, but it is synergies of real-world evidence sources in which the highest price services is EHR to EDC. So with that, sorry for trespassing on your time, Dan. It's over to you.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Matt. And it's great to be here today to talk about the work that we've been doing with AstraZeneca over the past 2 years. And in fact, I've been working very closely with Matt and his team for that whole period of 2 years. And yesterday was the first time I've actually met Matt in person. So it's fantastic to be here doing this now together. A little bit of background, first of all, about us and our journey. First of all, we've received quite a lot of UK government money in the form of grants that's allowed us to build the tool that we have now that's called Archer. That started before COVID, and as a result of COVID as well, the relevance of what we're doing was even more evident. So we received more money over COVID, and we were very, very busy throughout that whole period. And the other sort of important point to make is that we were approached by the EHR to EDC consortium at the beginning of last year, of which Matt and others are a part, and they did a vendor assessment of all the players globally that have this capability to potentially do what we do now. And I was very proud to say that we scored very highly in that, and certainly in the eyes of AstraZeneca, we are the number one globally. So that's why Matt and I are friends. So we are trying to be humble about this, but we truly believe that Archer is transforming patient data automation for clinical trials, and it's very much, and it is happening today. It's very much moved. It started off almost as an academic exercise. Could we do this? And it's very much moved into the realms of reality. You know, this is being deployed at hospitals in the UK, in Europe, and in the US now. And it's been supercharged as well by a partnership we have with ZS, who are here at this conference. At the beginning of the year, we received a large multi-million-dollar investment from ZS to help us industrialize the process. That means building more into the tool, and it means increasing our footprint across sites in the UK, in Europe, and in the US as well. And I was listening to a session yesterday actually about the challenges of startups and how they can scale. And they were saying that really startups need a scale-up partner to be able to, deal with the slow-moving processes of pharma and getting through the contracting and procurement and everything else. The route we decided to take to tackle that challenge was through a strategic alliance and partnership with ZS, which I believe is solving a lot of those problems. So, but it's a very exciting time for us. So this is two pictures. The picture on the left really is the story of why we're doing what we're doing. This is what we saw in 2014 when we founded the company. We were working at a very large central London hospital called King's College Hospital on a project to help them streamline their clinical research processes. And what we saw was this image on the left. It was lots of very expensive, highly trained, highly skilled people who were collecting data for the clinical studies. They knew that half of the data they needed for their study on average existed already, and it was in the patient's medical record at the sites, but then they had to manually transcribe it across, and it seemed crazy to us, that these people had spent thousands of pounds, years of their lives training to work in clinical research. One has to assume probably helping patients was part of the reason that drove that, and actually, in reality, what they were consuming huge amounts of their time doing was just manually transcribing this data across from one system to the other. So that was the idea that we said, surely in this day and age we can build something that reduces that need for that manual data entry. Can we pipe this data through the cloud in some way? That was the idea we had in 2014, and that's what we're now doing. But actually, in 2014, it wasn't possible to do what we're now doing. So we had to find other things to do for 5 years while we waited for the technology to catch up. The other things that we did were very interesting. They were mining EHRs for patient cohorts, for patient recruitment, et cetera, et cetera. But the technology I'm referring to is HL7 Fire. That's the game changer that allows us to do this, and also something else called Smart on Fire. And it was really only in 2019 that we took the view, just before COVID, that actually the technology had caught up to the point where it was possible to actually deploy the idea that we'd been working on. And that was just before COVID, as I said, and this was the world that we were trying to move to, the image on the right of data cleanly piping, straight through the cloud. What could be simpler? But obviously it's highly complex. And that also is against the context of, through that period, clinical studies have been getting more complex. Over the past 20 years, the number of data points required for an oncology study has doubled. So the job of the research nurses and the data managers at the hospitals of manually transcribing that data has just been getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And in fact, we've spoken to research nurses and data managers at hospitals who actively are scuppering the recruitment of studies because they know that as soon as they recruit those patients into the studies, it's just going to come with this huge burden of the manual data entry, and they just can't deal with it. They haven't got the time. So, it's a big, real issue that really affects the hospitals and certainly the sponsors. So, the solution that we envisaged was Archer, and as Matt said, we describe it as a virtual research assistant, and that's really important because we've built it for the hospital. We haven't built it primarily for pharmaceutical companies. For the benefit to the pharmaceutical company is actually a secondary benefit, because if the hospitals aren't using it, the whole thing remains an academic exercise. It's essential that the hospitals see that buy into the value proposition, which we're successfully doing at the moment. So it's a virtual research assistant. It sits within the EHR at the site through something called Smart on Fire. I won't go into exactly what that is, but it essentially means that it's a plug-in to the EHR, and that means that the clinicians and the research nurses, they never have to leave the patient's medical record to use Archer. It's a single sign-on. It's not a separate thing. It's been approved by Epic and Cerner and Allscripts and all these organisations. So it's literally just a button that appears within the framework that they're already using at the site, and it's designed to make the site more efficient. It sits in the cloud, and another important thing very important thing for our model is that we wanted it to be completely agnostic of both worlds, both EHR and EDC. So, and certainly for our sponsors such as Matt's, that's an important thing. The sponsors want to be able to they're not interested in single site solutions. They're not interested in companies solving just parts of this problem. We're trying to develop processes that can be applied to hospitals globally. That means that we've got to be able to work with all the EHRs and work with all of the EDCs. If you're trying to map data between, all of these EHRs and all of these EDCs, you've got a many-to-many problem. It's impossible to solve. So what we position ourselves at the middle, agnostic of all EHRs, agnostic of all EDCs, so that many-to-many becomes a many-to-one problem. And the example that I will show you of, there's a short video of 2.5 minutes long that I'll get to in a minute, and that shows the example of data flowing from the Epic instance at UCLH across to AstraZeneca's Medidata Rave instance in this way. So the value proposition, Matt has already spoken about the value proposition for sponsors. It's about, can you reduce your SDV bill? Can you reduce monitoring? that cost saving is a big thing, and it's an important thing. I'd argue there's other things about, for the sponsors as well, which I'll get into. But the critical thing is for the hospital. The concept is what we're trying to do with this virtual research assistant is we are trying to give those research nurses and those data managers time back. That time that they previously spent on manual data entry, if we can give them that time back, can they do something more valuable with that time? And that more valuable thing is patient recruitment. It frees up that barrier that I described before. Like, they're no longer scared of recruiting patients into studies now because they know that they're supported by this tool. They can do the manual data entry. It increases the capacity of the site to run more studies. It actually makes the site more attractive to sponsors from a site selection perspective as well. So it's a double whammy. The site can attract more studies, and then they can deliver the studies more efficiently. So it really does benefit anybody. But as Matt said, the critical thing is what we're not trying to do, even is reduce the payments to the site. That really would be cutting off your nose to spite your face. You want to keep the sites as happy as possible, protect the payments that are going there, but just make them more efficient and allow them to run more studies. And this is another, Matt spoke about the cost reduction element, but actually the meta level thing here that we're trying to do is, can it shorten time to study database lock? This is about speeding up the studies. It's about, ultimately getting the products to market faster, benefits of which are obvious. So the site implementation success, what this hinges on is, we're having a lot of success already, particularly in the UK, working with big, very, very research active sites, and it's starting to accelerate. And the thing that it relies on is a site being what we call eSource ready. So in our minds, eSource readiness is about running one of the large, major modern EHR systems, having that data concept mapped across to the FHIR resources, and having the FHIR server switched on. The thing we can't really help the sites with is getting the modern EHR in the first place. That's a very expensive thing. But once they've got that, the other steps of getting the FHIR server switched on and concept mapping the data points across are relatively straightforward. And we can help and educate the sites to do that, particularly working with IHD and people like Deepak Kaura, who's here today, to help them on that journey. But when we present this and the value proposition to hospitals who are eSource ready, we have a 100% success rate of the hospitals wanting to work with this. The value proposition is more complex than that. I'd be very happy to explain. I don't have time now to go into it in more detail, but the sponsor, there's things like the sponsor covers the cost, the site doesn't have to pay for commercial studies. There's other elements to it, but it's a very compelling value proposition for the site. So we are imminently about to deploy the first pilot of this at UCLH on an AstraZeneca oncology study. It's a clinical study. This works just as well for real-world studies, for retrospective chart reviews, for all designs of study, anything where there's manual data entry going on. Archer does the job, and everybody that's involved in this project so far at UCLH is very excited with it. Behind the scenes, what we're looking at the moment is structured data initially. So we're looking at in an oncology study, there's lab data, vital signs, concomitant medications, demographics. So we're looking at those structured fields initially because that's what our sponsor partners want us to do. We have a work stream going on to build a module to look at unstructured data as well, using NLP to interpret that data and convert it into a structured format. That's not live yet. And it's also all been built to the guidelines of the regulators. The regulators is an important point. Regulators this is the direction of travel that they want the industry to go into. They've provided guidelines around which, people should build to make it regulatory grade, which we have adhered to. We leave it to our partners to have the discussions with the regulators. It's better that comes from IHD and sponsors rather than from us, but we've built it so that it ticks all the boxes that they've published. And the findings, so this mirror study that we are running at the moment, it's a mirror study. It's not affecting the delivery of the main study at all, but we will be measuring exactly what the benefits are. Everyone associated with the project is very confident that there's going to be obvious benefits to doing what we're doing, but have we measured exactly what the time savings are and exactly what percentage of data could be automated in this way for this study? We haven't measured that yet. That's what's going to happen over the next 3 months. And as soon as that data is available in the summer, we will publish a report, and we'd be very happy to obviously circulate it widely. So if you want to have a copy of that paper, please contact me afterwards, or connect to me through LinkedIn or something like that, and I will be happy to send it on to you. Just thought I'd close on a quote from Dr. Wai-Kyung Wong from UCLH. He's the Chief Research Information Officer there, who's a huge champion of this project and has been involved in it all the way through. But seeing Archer now actively automating data from UCLH's EPIC EHR with such ease is really extremely encouraging for the future of conducting clinical trials in digitally enabled healthcare organizations. Okay, so that's it. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Hey, Dan, good morning. Thank you so much for an excellent presentation. My name is Dirk. Excited to catch up with you after this session. Yeah. So I have a number of questions, and I thought maybe you could just pick your favorite one and answer that one, and then we can handle the rest later.
Yeah, sure.
So one is, who owns this technology? Can the sponsor own this technology, and are the sites open to that? And does that pose any regulatory concerns? The next one is, do you actually think that the data quality in EHRs has gotten good enough for this to really work? I've also heard concerns about the depth of data exposed through SmarterFire, so will it actually bring meaningful change? Then I'm curious which FHIR domains are currently integrated, but we'll take that offline.
Yeah.
And then I think the final one is whose name goes into the audit trail after this whole thing happened?
Yeah, good questions, Doug. And we have already built a connector to Castor as well. So and Castor is, in fact, it was the first connector we built because we really are big fans of your EDC platform and the approach that you're taking. So who owns the data? Who owns the technology? So, I mean, the technology is owned by us. It's deployed at the sites. It's been co-developed with our sponsor partners, and what we're trying to do is create a marketplace of sponsor connections. As I said, we want to be agnostic, so we want to connect to Castor, we want to connect to Medidata Rave on that side. We also want to work with as many sponsors as possible because that benefits the site. AstraZeneca is leading the charge and is at the front of the pace, but it's in AstraZeneca's best interest if all sponsors can utilize a tool such as Archer. What the site doesn't want is to have lots of different solutions to do this. They don't want to have the AstraZeneca one and the Novartis one. So, so it's not owned by the sponsor. It's not owned by the site. It's owned by us. Sorry, what was the other the data points I can go into afterwards? What was the other question you had?
If you feel that data quality in EHR systems.
Data quality, yeah, that was it. Yeah. So it's a journey. You're absolutely right. The data quality in the EHRs is not perfect at all. But there's enough. The analysis that we've done at UCLH, and it varies from site to site, right? But certainly the analysis that we've done at UCLH is that the data quality is good enough to satisfy what we need to do. In fact, what UCLH see is that tools and use cases such as Archer encourage the clinicians at the site to code the data better in the first place. You know, if they see what's possible, if they're coding it correctly, then this is what happens. But it's, you know, it's a journey. There's a percentage of data that we can do with this, and there's a percentage of sites. So hybrid is the word. You know, there is no alternative other than to do this in a hybrid manner. You can't flick a switch and suddenly do this at all sites globally. We're starting small. It's a journey that the whole industry is on. If we're just doing it at 10% of sites, that's better than nothing. But that number is growing rapidly. All sites are on a journey to becoming eSource ready. And if we're just doing it on 30% of the data points initially, that's better than nothing as well. And that percentage will increase as we go through, move into the unstructured fields, et cetera, et cetera. But I'd be happy to pick up the other points with you afterwards.
I would like to build on that from a sponsor perspective. And believe me, I've been on this journey for almost 10 years now, also together with Deepak. So we are now, also, this is not for all, but we hope that we can drive a momentum in the healthcare organization industry and the hospital way of these are the requirements to be EHR to EDC or eSource ready, as Dan was saying. That will drive quality. That will drive the qualification to have a driving license, to be a player in this game. So that is an answer to your question. And of course, it's a journey. And we think, which I think is with great excitement, that we are only 2 weeks from starting our pilot with an oncology trial, where it is a huge benefit of the 3 data domains that we are going to shadow. And we know that those data exist. Thank you.
Any further questions?
Thank you. Very, very good presentation. Do you have an idea of an estimation of the number of EHR software, EHR system that you can pick the data from today?
It needs to be a modern EHR that's FHIR-enabled, basically. So certainly, I don't have a number for you, no, but I mean, all of the main ones. So in the UK, 50% of hospitals in the UK are running one of the big 4 EHRs, Epic, Cerner, InterSystems, etc. So theoretically, we can work with 50% of the hospitals in the UK. Practically, they're not all eSource ready yet because they haven't yet switched on the FHIR server and they haven't concept mapped the data across. So, but at a hospital, you've got the central EHR, and then you've got the sort of satellite systems that sit around it. You might have something for prescribing or, oncology systems or whatever else it is. In theory, anything that's FHIR-enabled, we can connect to, and that's the journey that the industry is on. So over time, that number will just increase. Sorry, I can't give you a more precise answer than that.
Just one more question over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi. Graham Downing from UCB. Maybe taking the pharma company side a little bit. Are you seeing or projecting that this will change how you set up the RAVE EDC? And potentially that has a knock-on effect earlier in the process about how protocols even get written.
Matt's favourite topic.
Because it's part of my sort of more subtle reflections.
I thought so.
The short answer is yes. And here's why. If we could collaborate with hospitals in a much deeper way, if we could connect EHR to EDC capability with our recruitment sites, what would happen besides the things that we have already... Yeah, that we already has achieved. This is the interesting point, and this is the answer to your question. The industry is still very idiosyncratic when we are designing our protocols. They are notoriously complicated. They are subject for amendments and pain in recruitment. If we could, EHR to EDC, this is my proposition, this is my assertion, is that we could probably get a much better feeling and collaboration in designing our protocols so it's directly hooked in to the patient population. And that will give us a much better study success. So that's the, and thank you for that. So I think that is probably a very profound but very exciting opportunity.
So
I think we're trespassing on the time. So
Yeah, thank you.